Okay, welcome everybody. We're so delighted you're here. And I am Greg Johnson. I am the director of the Walter H. Kapp Center for the Study of Ethics, Religion, and Public Life here at the University of California, Santa Barbara, where it's a beautiful day yet again. I want to acknowledge right at the outset that this institution sits on Chumash lands and waters. This is an issue that needs to be addressed. It's something we need to talk about out loud. And this series is part of that broader conversation about Indigenous peoples, lands, institutions, and democracy. I trust that our guests will have more to say along these lines, and in particular about the situation in California and in Hawaii. Tonight, and welcome to our event, Sacred Summits to Frontline Actions, an evening with Pua Case and Chief Caleen Sisk. I'm just so excited for this. It's bringing our series, our year-long series, to such a great place in our conversation. To set the stage, what I want to do now is we're going to play a short video and listen for themes of ceremony, for the beauty of these movements, for the nature of solidarity, and we'll go from there. Maybe if we could please have the next video. Okay. I just love that so much. And I think it sets the stage so beautifully for what we hope to accomplish tonight, a conversation about solidarities in land protection movements, ceremony in those same contexts. Before we get to tonight's material, I just want to tell you about a great event we have coming this next week. And maybe if we could please have that next slide. So this is our next and final event in the Ethics in Place series we've been holding all year, and it is a conversation with Nick Tilson of the Indian Collective out of South Dakota. They're doing just amazing things. In fact, they've worked in great solidarity in Minnesota with the Black Lives Movement, very attentive to the events of today, very involved in things that happened this summer in the Black Hills. Nick Tilson and his group are just doing fabulous things to keep pushing the envelope of accountability to Native peoples and their lands. So please tune in. It's next Tuesday, 4 p.m. Pacific time, and you won't be disappointed. Okay, if you could take that down, thank you. A few other preliminaries. I'd like to thank our staff, the Associate Director of the Center, Maeve DeVoy, and our students, Alma Mendoza and Madden West. They run the show. I'm so grateful for the work they do. And also a note to thank our donors who make these kinds of events possible, and support from other colleagues and administrators here. So thank you all. Now, it is my great pleasure to introduce our guests, one of whom I've known for, gosh, now 6 years, and the other I'm just getting to know. First, Kumupua Case, who I met on Mauna Kea in the summer of 2015, and was absolutely amazed at the kind of community she was working with, helping to build, the ceremonial engagements they practice with regard to their land protection actions. And having come to know her, I've attended to her work and ever since, and so delighted she and her good friend Chief Sisk can join us. Kumu Case and Chief Sisk, if you'd please come on the screen while I read your introductions, and then I'll hand it over to you both. So Kumupua Case was born and raised on the island of Hawaii, surrounded by the high mountains of Mauna Kea, Mauna Loa, Hulualai, Kohala, the freshwaters of Kohako, Hau, and Waikoloa, and the plains of Waimea. Pua's life path and purpose has led her to become a kumuhula, a teacher of traditional dance and chant, a teacher of the lifeways, culture, and traditions of the Kanaka Maoli, or Native peoples of Hawaii. Pua has been part of the Mauna Kea movement over the past 10 years, maybe more than that by now, and has been involved in both community and frontline actions to safeguard the mountain and unify peoples of all nations in a collective mission to network, plan, and support one another. Pua has supported many stances around the world, including Standing Rock in North Dakota, Split Rock Camp in New York, Ohlone and Winnemem Wintu in California, Oak Flat in Arizona, and has assisted organizations and individuals in areas including New York, Louisiana, and Minnesota in their efforts to protect their rivers and wetlands. Chief Caleen Sisk is the spiritual leader and tribal chief of the Winnemem Wintu Tribe. Her ancestral territory expands along the McCloud River watershed on Mount Shasta. She is the fifth leader in an unbroken traditional leadership since settler contact, who has dedicated her life to advocating for the restoration of salmon, about which we'll hear tonight, water, and the human rights to water, which dovetails very well with some of the United Nations level conversations we've been having in this symposium. She has received international honors as a tireless sacred site protector and currently leads the tribe's resistance against the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation's proposal to raise Shasta Dam 18 feet and inundate or damage more than 400 sacred sites. Caleen is an internationally known speaker on traditional, tribal, and spiritual issues, having spoken on diverse topics such as spiritual medicine ways, the spirit of water, climate change, sacred sites protection, and the responsibility of tribal people to honor their tribal lifeway. Caleen is also a leading voice in raising awareness of the poor human rights conditions suffered by federally unrecognized tribes and underrepresented Indigenous peoples. She is the visionary of the historical project of the Run for Salmon Prayer that seeks to bring back the wild chinook salmon runs that were taken to New Zealand, Aotearoa, to restore the salmon runs in California's largest watershed that are currently on the verge of extinction. And with that, I want to turn it over to you both. We are so grateful you're here and so eager to learn from you. Audience, I hope you're as excited as I am. Please post up your questions as we go. We will carve out some time at the end to return to those questions. Also, if you have any information about these movements you'd like to share, post that up. But for now, let's turn it over. I'll go off the screen and we'll hear from our two guests and we'll have a bit more video along the way. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Aloha mai kako. Aloha everyone. I know that we have friends, relatives, relations from Hawaii to California to probably way beyond that out there today. And both Caleen and I would like to acknowledge you. Many of you have probably stood with us, supported our movements, been a large part of the movements that we will be speaking about today. So we want to send our aloha to every single one of you who are tuning in today. I'd like to start by saying that the video that you just saw, Together We Rise, was put together by my daughter, Kapule Flores, who's a photographer and documenter for the Mauna Kea movement and for the Protect Mauna Kea Instagram. And it was a song that was written by my daughter, Havani Rios, on her way to a frontline action in 2015. So I'm just calling both my daughters to be here with me and everything that I say and do today. And I'm here with Caleen, who really I've known for a number of years now. And she's my comrade and my best friend. And we've stood shoulder to shoulder, heart to heart, you know, arm in arm throughout the years for each other and really for many of you who are here. So to set the tone, I'm going to ask her really if she would start with a prayer or start in the way of the lands in which this Zoom is coming from. California. I'm here in Hawaii, so I'm here truly apart from the land that this is being shown on. So to begin, we begin with the prayer, the intention, the blessing, the clearing from Chief Caleen Sisk of the Winnemem Wintu.
He chala besken, howana chala bim, wintu tinas ting ting. Puyum puyuk, okuan Elowe pudum, chalama pudum, nechai, nechaman, howana suhana. Saomem, okuan Elowe pudum. Also praying for the ones who have left us and all of the things that they added to our lives and to the strength that we have today, so that we call on the mountain, we call on the spirits, the sacred ones, to watch over them as they leave us, and to know that we're going to be okay, and that we're going to keep carrying these things on until the good things happen, till the good things come. There's good things coming, and we're getting people ready. So what I'd ask the audience to do now, the ones who can, is get your water. We're going to be talking about a whole lot of things, and We pray over our water. We sing to our water. We know that water is life. Water is sacred. So I want to leave you with the song as you get your water, if you don't have any. And at the end of the meeting here today, and the things that we share and talk and your questions and things, that you take that water at the end and you take it out and you give it to a tree. You give it to a tree so that it gives life. It continues to give that life and give our prayers to the Creator in that way. So I just want to share this song for us to get our hearts and minds in the good place, to try to help each other throughout the world, throughout all of the things that people have seen, to set that aside for right now and to engage in the sacred things and think about those things. So my mes beles bom, so my mes beles bom, pihat bo he wintun told, why can we legas knees? So my mes beles bom, so my mes beles bom. Pihat bohe wintun told, why can we legas knees? Oh, and na chalabim wintu tina ting ting. Oh. Oh.
So I think I'll begin by introducing myself so that Caleen and I can go back and forth on something that's really important as we introduce ourselves. I think that both of us and many of you in traditional, cultural, indigenous, native ways will always say your name in your language perhaps, and your mountain and your waterways and the lands that have raised you. So I'll begin by simply saying Opua Ko'uinoa, Opua case Ko'uinoa, O Mauna Awa Kea Ku'umauna. Pua case is my name, Pua means flower, so flower is my name. And Mauna Kea, Mauna Awa Kea is my mountain. And lately, I've really been thinking about that. When we say the name of our mountain and say it's our mountain, what does that really mean? What does that mean for us that we are able to say those words when we introduce ourselves to each other, to the spirit world, to places that we travel at, to gatherings that we attend? What is it to say, this is my mountain? So what it brings to mind for me is growing up on the slopes of this mountain that actually I can see right at this moment outside of my front yard. It's about maybe 45 minutes from here, but if there were any construction attempts, trust me, I'd get there in at least just a half an hour, because this is a cat. That's, sorry about that. It's a Zoom outside. So I think he's going to join. But when I think about being able to say, Mauna Kea is my mountain, it's because for me, and just me alone, because we all have our own connections, and I'm not speaking for anyone else today, not even my family, just me. I was born and raised on the slopes of this mountain. My father was in charge of water for Parker Ranch, so my entire childhood and really most of my life was spent in a ranch truck, looking for water, checking on cattle and horses, and just living this life on the slopes of the Mauna. So we knew Mauna Kea as Big Mama, and Big Mama fed us and nourished us and protected us from the storms. And when you're a child, you're not learning about all perhaps the ancestral ties, the spiritual ties. You just know that that's Big Mama who's always going to be there to feed you. And you don't even have to go to the top, and which I never did in my childhood. We just gazed at the top, and that's because we didn't have a vehicle that could get us up there, really. And so when I was growing up later, we began to learn about Mauna Kea. You know, like Mauna Kea was our ancestor. Mauna Kea was where our lineage was tied to. Mauna Kea was where some of our significant stargazing navigational ways were set up there on the Mauna. And then in 2009 and 10, when we started just reaching into getting involved as petitioners for Mauna Kea, for the protection of this Mauna against the construction of a 30-meter telescope, that's when it really solidified for me. And we began to go up the mountain every month, because we had to get stronger, we had to get strengthened, we had to get more connected. Singing from the hillside to the Mauna wasn't going to be enough anymore. And we had always had ancestral ways tied to the mountain, but now we were on the Mauna because now we were going to need to stand like we had never stood before. And for my family, it was opening the door to court and hearings and things that others had been doing for maybe 20 years for Mauna Kea. We stepped in and joined them and began our journey. And then it was all different. And then our lives changed. And then we became fully immersed, involved, really with choice and no choice. Kuleana, we stood with the thousands of you who have stood. And we were able to say, Mauna Kea is my mountain. So depending on what phase I'm in my life, I can always say Mauna Kea is my mountain. The more I know, the deeper I'm able to articulate that. And I'm standing today as Mauna Kea Ohana, Kia'i of Mauna Kea, protector of Mauna Kea, speaking for myself and my connection to this sacred mountain. And what does it mean to say Mauna Kea is sacred? It means it's still teaching us. It means there's living, breathing nature, spiritual world, ancestral wisdom that shapes our conduct and our protocol and shares with us the mysteries and the information that we don't know, and gives our children something to really stand for and believe in. So, o Mauna Awa Kea, Mauna Kea is my mountain. And so I'm going to ask Caleen to kind of look at that same question. When she says her mountain is, what does that mean to her that she's able to say that?
I love that bird singing with you. So Neto yet kayaktis Boyum Winnemem Waiwake Boyum Puyuk Wana Chala. So I'm from the Winnemem River that comes from Boyum Puyuk, or mountain. And you know, I too have lived here, born and raised. My parents were born and raised on the river before the dam was put in. My family has always, on both sides, been from here. You know, California became a state in 1850. We were here at that time. And my grandma always said, you know, we're still here, not because they didn't shoot at us, but because they were bad shots. And so they didn't kill all the California Indians. You know, that was a law. The first law of California was to do that. And they really tried hard to do that, but unsuccessful. There was a few tribes that survived that and are still here today. And so I feel like my tribe has been a fortunate one in that the leaders of the tribe didn't all get killed in the beginning of the statehood. And so we were able to learn from the leaders before us. And I was lucky to learn from my Grams's generation, which is, you know, a whole generation that was spent on the river before the Shasta Dam. And then my mother and my father's years, they were only there until they were young teenagers. And of course, our generations since then have not been able to live on the river. They have taken all of the land of the river, and they have blocked Winnemems from ever living there or owning land there anymore. We lost all of the, what do they call the allotment that the federal government tried to give back land to the Indian people, and especially here in California too. But once the dam went in, everything was lost. Everything was done. And going, you know, we have so many stories about what to do, asking the mountain, what should we do? What are we going to do about this? You know, they came in and they started, Grandma says, bossing our fish around and set up these hatchery on our river, the first one on the West Coast. And we said down a prayer. There was the whole gathering and a whole ceremony done and asking Buyumpuyuk, what should we do? And that from the medicine people, that salmon was sent through an ice waterfall on Mount Shasta, Buyumpuyuk. And we were told there they will wait. Well, it wasn't until 2004 when we did the war dance on Shasta Dam, as that is the weapon of mass destruction that took our land and blocked our fish and, you know, left us in some sort of a homeless situation, you know, left us in a poor situation. And so from that time, we found out that our salmon were in New Zealand. And so that started another whole thing about, you know, ice waterfalls on Iraqi, and the Maori were a part of all of that. And so now we have family in New Zealand who are trying to help us with the salmon return home. You know, so that's how it works. You know, these places are of power, are of knowing. Graham says that Buyumpuyuk is connected to 20 sacred mountains around the world. And those sacred mountains around the world hold Mother Earth together. And with Mother Earth comes this ancient waters. And in these mountains are the banks of the waters. And we can't treat them like, you know, modern day is doing to these places. You know, they're in Virginia, they're doing mountaintop removal. What if they were doing that to those sacred ones? And I say that because that's how I see it with Mauna Kea. They're going to shave off a 40-acre flat land area, maybe more, and that's like a mountaintop removal. And once that happens, there will be repercussions. These mountains will not stand for that. And we will be the ones who, you know, have some explaining to do as to why those things occurred. And so we have to do everything. We have to show the sacred. We're going to do everything we can to help stop this from happening, so that they don't turn to us and wonder, what is it that you did? What did you do? Did you do nothing while this was happening? Because, you know, like Graham says, Mother Earth is like a giant dog, and we're the fleas. And anytime she could just scratch us off and be rid of us. And that would be that. She says, when you go up to the mountains, and our mountains are a little different than Pua's in that we really can't see Mount Shasta unless we're up on the top of another mountain to look over all the mountains before we get there. But then when you get close, you can see it. but there are waters that come off of this mountain that feed the entire state. You know, when I was in Hawaii and we were driving around, and what I say, the Big Island is as big as Lake Shasta. Lake Shasta is 371 miles around. And I think that's what the Big Island is, not much bigger than that, if bigger. And so I'm used to going a long way to get around something. But everywhere we went, I would ask, you know, here's Rainbow Falls, or where does that water come from? Well, that water comes from Mauna Kea. Well, this river here, where does that water come from? Well, that water comes from Mauna Kea. And so I'm thinking, like, all of these towns everywhere on this island should be up in arms about that. But in addition to that, is like, there's this bank of water underneath. That's the water bank that feeds the island, but it's also the water bank that is connected to Buyumpuyuk. It's connected to Iraqi. It's connected to Uchimik. And everything that happens to these sacred mountains happens to all of us. I mean, that's the connection. It's like our belief in the salmon is that whatever happens to the salmon, because the salmon gave us voice, happens to us. And so when the Shasta Dam was built and the salmon could no longer go home, we found that we could no longer go home either. We had no homes either. And so the sacred is something that we take seriously, and we look to it to guide and help, and to help us understand what is it that we can do, you know. The sacred, when you look at the tops of these mountains, and you'll see the winds that come through, and the kind of changes that happen either with fog or the snow flurries or things that move on the mountaintops themselves. And then you have the snows and the waters from those snows, but older waters. I don't know if you can understand older waters. And I say that because Mount Shasta, Buyumpuyuk, used to be always, like Graham said, she would always wear her coat. But because people have been abusing her, she's taken her coat off because they won't mind. They keep trying to get her coat dirty. So she takes it off. And when she takes it off, she also, there's a teaching going on in it, and the people call it drought. And they think it's something different than a lesson by nature or by, you know, spirit beings. We believe that those are spirit beings. Wind and water and fire are all spirit beings, and they have been here so much longer than us as little people. When we were in spirit form, we still were younger than they were. And now that we have physical form, we're way younger than they are. So we should, you know, listen again. But it's so hard, you know, with different religions and everything. It's like when I say stuff like that, I can just imagine people saying, "Oh yeah, she's a nut. She must be crazy." But that's the way I was trained. That's the way I believe. When I see the little birds coming through here, migration is on right now. And so many little flocks of birds are passing through this way to get to where they're going. And already, you know, we're putting out extra feed because of the wildfires that happened. And we're putting out, you know, the waters because they're going through at a disadvantage. You know, we have so much happening that we can't hardly wiggle. I mean, but we're going to continue. We're going to continue to stand there. I mean, like Graham says, we got to stand there just like the pine trees. You know, so that's kind of where I'm from. I've been taught to take care of my family, to take care of the people the best we can, and to follow this way. Yeah.
Mahalo, Caleen. Every time I'm privileged and blessed enough to have company with Caleen, I'm listening really deeply. I'm learning, relearning every single time to every word that she's saying. So I think what I'll do, Caleen, is take them to kind of how we first met, because in that we also will be on Mauna Kea and your sacred Mauna as well. So my family was instructed, you could say, to go to what we know as Mount Shasta, and we just listened. We just listened because Mauna Kea said, go and connect to that sacred Mauna. And so we traveled there in, I think it was 2013. And we tried to find the Winnemem Wintu because we knew that they were the descendants of the Mauna. We had read that, we knew that, but we couldn't connect with them. So we went and had ceremony and asked the nature beings to excuse that we had not made that physical contact, but upon coming back, we were able to do so. And then Caleen had a film that I asked the Waimea Film Festival if they would show it so that we could begin to acknowledge that mountains are indeed connected and therefore people are connected as well. And Caleen and her family actually came to Hawaii during that film festival. And like she was saying, we made those connections. We traveled around the island and we met the waterways with them and the Mauna. And we have been, you could say, joined together and connected ever since. So in 2015, in March, Caleen decided to come back to Hawaii. And Havani and I were in Germany at that time. Havani was working on her Kukia Imauna Together We Rise CD. And we were there when the first call went out to come up and stand for Mauna Kea. And I remember that we were communicating with the Kia'i at that time through Facebook messages, like, Auntie, we're going up, what should we do? And this is what is happening every day. And then we came back to Hawaii and Caleen actually met us at the airport. And the next morning, we found ourselves on the drive up to the Mauna because we had received the call that the police were coming. And you have to know that for us here in Hawaii, that was a huge transition for us, just to hear my daughter say, the police are chasing me and I'm heading up the mountain, was huge. We weren't used to that. And many of our people had never been involved in any kind of stance, especially the young people that resembled that. But Caleen jumped in the truck with me. We headed up the mountain. And as we headed up there, we were receiving the text messages of those who had been arrested at the 9,000-foot level. And so I'm going to ask that a clip be shown of us doing just that. Here we are. We are strong. We have decided how we leave the Mauna today. We are leaving the Mauna as Aloha Aina patriots, as our ancestors once stood, we are still here. We are standing. We are going down the Mauna to now take care of our ohana. The mountain is taking leaving the Mauna as Aloha Aina patriots, as our ancestors once stood. We are still here. We are standing. We are going down the Mauna to now take care of our ohana. The mountain is taking care of itself, and we go down to take care of the warriors who are now in the cell block, and we honor them, and their names will be known forever for standing. And this is a call out to all of you, Hawaii and beyond. If you cannot be on the Mauna, because this is just not your time, then stand in your place and stand strong from wherever you are. But if you were on the Mauna, would be even better, because you don't know the feeling that we feel right now. Yes, the machinery went up there, but you know what? We did what we came here for. We are proud. We are strong. For those of us with Koko Hawaii, we are Hawaiian. We are Kanaka Maoli. We are standing here. And our ancestors are looking down on us. And our grandchildren yet to be born are smiling. And we could not be anywhere else. So now we go to Hilo. And we take care of our warriors, because we are, I don't know more, warriors rising. Eo.
Okay, Maeve, I think we can pause it there. Thanks.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Mahalo, Greg. Yes, that's right. That was exactly what I sent. Mahalo. It was coming down the Mauna after the arrestees had been brought down in vans. And again, I want to just say that many of us, that was our first time on the mountain, seeing our people getting arrested. Our friends, our relatives, our allies, our Kanaka, Maoli, Native Hawaiians getting arrested. Most of us had not experienced that before. Of course, since 2015 all the way until 2020, we have seen that again in our kupuna, especially who were arrested in 2019. Times have changed. We've gotten more steadfast in all of the ways, nonviolent training, the actions. We've had to but Caleen and I went up that mountain, came down that mountain, and then over time we've stood on each other's front lines, wherever that might be, and helped one another to do whatever it takes in the best way that we can to hold on to the sacred, to hold on to the summit, to hold on to the waterways, the lifeways, and all that we hold dear. So what does that bring back for you, Caleen?
Oh, so much. So much that when our spring dried up on Mount Shasta, Buyumpuyuk Sawamem was dry. And again, we sent out the prayers and asked, what is it that we can do? And so we were sent on a mission. And everybody said, oh, you're just going to Hawaii to vacation. It's like, well, I don't really have a whole lot of money to vacation. I'm barely getting there. And so it was during the time that our film, Dancing Salmon Home, was playing in Waimea. And I knew that we were supposed to go over to Hawaii, but I didn't really know which island that we were supposed to be on or anything. But then when the film was there, then I felt like, oh, that's that's probably where we're supposed to be. And so in doing that, we had a list of things, and at the time I didn't know who Pua was, or that she had even come to Buyumpuyuk before. And so I had sent over a request from the film people, and I said, you know, I wanted to do these things, but I needed to have permission from the Hawaiians who would be able to help us to do those things. Like, we, on our list was that we needed to go out and sing to the whales. We needed to pray to the sea turtles. We needed to go and get water, collect water on their mountain. And we needed, you know, we had a whole list of what we needed to do. And we hadn't really been there before, so we didn't know where all those things were. And that's when we got in touch with Pua, and she was still teaching school at that time, you know, at the elementary school. And so we were able to complete our prayer there, and we brought back some of that water with us to our sacred place. That was one of the things that we were to do. And so we also sang to what they call the oldest fires of ocean, of waves. And in when we saw them in Hilo, the ocean, I mean, lava that's flowing like an ocean wave. And so it's like it all fit, you know, because I really never saw real lava before, other than, you know, pictures of, you know, Tarzan, the exploding mountain behind them. But we were able to do all of those things, and we came back. And then it was when I went back because of the Mauna, because of the things that were the connection. It's like I felt like I had to say about that, you know, because we did all that for Buyumpuyuk, you know, we were on a mission, we're really focused in on that. But then it's like we didn't really say the connections of these mountains. It's like, because for mountains, they're very close. They're not as far away as some of the other sacred mountains. And so so I went back, and that's when Pua quit her job, came out of her classroom, quit her job, said she couldn't do both, couldn't be the fighter for the mountain and stand in the classroom waiting to go fight. And we did go up on the mountain, and we put down some prayers for all of the warrior people who were there, and could see what was going on there. And then of course later, you know, the crosswalk that they were so indigenously clever about, walking across and stopping the cars back and forth. Somehow somebody got it erased. They went and covered up the crosswalk. There's no more crosswalk. And then where we were parked, and there was a little building there that they had put up for the food and things for the people who were coming in to help. They put a guardrail right there so nobody could park right there. And it's like, that's the flattest part of the mountain. And they put a guardrail, when down the road where you're coming around the curves should have had a guardrail. There was none. And so it was amazing that how there is it's almost like a lack of ethics. There's no ethics in capitalism or in building and productions and, you know, progress. That's what they call progress. They don't have any ethics that is you can call on, or that they would stand behind, or to stand for. It's just the job, and it has its permits. And maybe the permits are the ethics. I don't know how that works, but it totally ignores the sacredness that is ethical. that is of a place that can never be put back once people find a way to destroy it. And that's the hard part, you know. It's like I was thinking about this presentation tonight, and it's like there's a lack of understanding of ethics also. You know, I did learn that when Peace Corps goes into some place to help communities, you know, in the backwoods or wherever they go, that the community agrees to some ethics of not harming them and not doing this or not doing that. But there is no ethics that they give to the community. Like, we will leave you in better shape than we came here. We will not destroy what you have, meaning with our helping you. They don't have any ethics like that. And so a lot of times it isn't help. It is damaged. It is damage that they come in and do, and there's nothing you can do about it. You know, even in this country with all its laws and politics and lawyers and everything, it's like if somebody comes into our community and leaves us in worse condition that we were, and it feels like it's on purpose, and they move on and become a part of the government, then that, you know, is harm. But there's nothing you can do if nobody has any codes of ethics or laws of ethics or anything you can hold them on. It's like this country is so clever like that, even at the UN level. You know, they're particular about what they sign on to. You know, they don't sign on to a whole lot of things about human rights, but they have signed on to the discriminatory treatments. But still, you can't hold them accountable for the obvious things that are happening. You know, we have the Mauna Kea movement. We have Line 3 that's happening right now. We have, you know, the Dapple and Standing Rock. We have Oak Flat. We have so many places that are struggling to keep their ethics, you know, even with the Berkeley shell mounds, you know. And I always say is like, if Berkeley can't do it, it seems like it's the world-renowned center that people from all over the world come to get educated. And if they can't see the shell mound there, and they can't see the Ohlone people struggling with their ethics to stand for it and to have a vision for the continuation of the Ohlone people in connection to that shell mound, but instead, like vanishing sidewalks the crosswalks on the Mauna Kea, they put up 6-foot fencing with razor wire on top to keep the Ohlone people from walking out there and praying. So, you know, what kind of country and people, you know, I have that deep question about that. And if people have answers for the ethics, because I feel like they're really missing, and I don't know where they're supposed to be taught. You know, where do the general population get their ethics, or what are they? Because it doesn't include, you know, the very things that keep us all alive, like water, mountains. Yeah, they don't have to believe in what I believe in, but they should allow things to exist that have existed for millions of years. And it seems like there's no ethics, no codes of ethics to let that be. Yeah.
So Caleen, I think I'm hearing you talking about code of ethics, and I'm going to, what is making me reflect on is the code of conduct that on the other side of that we abide by, that we put into place, which is ritual, ceremony, prayer, chant, dance, values, the way of existence of our people that were passed down that comes to mind when you're talking about how the other side, which could be a business, could be a corporation, could be a university, could be any of those things, you know, huge institutions, businesses, for whatever reason, that come into your territories, into your homelands. And like you said, they will construct, they will desecrate, they will destroy some part, some integral part of what you are doing the very best to prevent there in the protection of what you need to do. So I have seen that in both of our stances, and just in the way that we conduct ourselves, is that we put in a code of conduct, protocols that come from our cultural understanding, teachings, wisdom. And for us, at least in 2019 to 20, that went around the world in the form of the AHA, 3 times a day, every day. You set the intention, the commitment, you seal it in prayer, in connection to whether it be your environment, the nature beings, your ancestors, the source of all things. We did our very best and still do our very best to abide by that, so that, as we said on the Mauna, our security is your self-discipline. And that self-discipline, whether it was 30 people, 3,000 people, 7,000 people, became the foundation of all of that was in 3 times a day doing our AHA, so that we could stand as pillars. And pillars for us, what was the word kukulu? We stand as a mountain, we stand as our altars, we stand as rocks, and therefore we stand as people. And the call out was made by the people of this place, that are the native people of this place, connected to the Mauna, as it is everywhere. Everywhere that it is some kind of traditional, cultural, lineage-based stance comes from those people. But it went to everyone, whether you were from the Pacific, whether you were from the whole wide world, whether you were a friend, a relative, a relation. The call out went out to anyone who could stand with us from afar or from Hawaii. And because of that, many people from around the world came to Hawaii during that time to stand with us. And so I've also stood with you in your ceremonies, participated, assisted in every way that I could at your camps, at your prayer vigils. And that is what grounds us. That's the pico, the central cord from us to whatever we stand for, is that we still have the guidelines, the protocols that deepen the manner in which we stand. So I'm going to ask you to speak a little bit about how ceremony fits into everything that you're doing as well. And then maybe we could show your film so that people can see that as we speak of it.
Mhm. Well, that's like I say, the teachings from the land, like these things come from the land that we live on. Like even the language, I mean, the language has to do with what do you hear, how do you see that, the vibrations of sound within your own places, so and utilizing what's here to help you live, to survive. And then you have patterns that you develop, like when you go hunting, you have patterns of taking another life, of prayer, and of asking, and of not taking the what do they have, the the best, the biggest, this stuff their head kind of deer or buck. You know, it's like being out with the hunters from my tribe, and they would watch the biggest deer we've ever seen walk right on by. And later I asked my grandpa, I was like, why would we do that? And he goes, because that one's going to make more big ones like that. If we take him, there won't be any more big ones because he's so big. He might be the only one. He might be one of 10 in our forest. So we let him go. We don't need him. He's going to do more for us, not in our bellies. And so, you know, realizing that when the fish swim up the river and the water is low, it's a low water year, that it's our job to fish them out of the pools that they can't jump over, the falls, and carry them up and release them on the top. Not to take them all that we see in the pool. And that's the same message, is that when they go upstream, there's going to be more salmon that come back. You know, there will be more because they're going where they need to be to make more that goes out to the ocean. And the ocean needs lots of salmon. I mean, the whales, the orcas, the seals, the sea lions, all of them, all the way down to the crustaceans that need those salmon. And there used to be millions of them, you know, and now we're down to, we're dwindling down. And so that's another prayer that comes from William Puyuk about the water, you know, because the salmon are so connected to our water system. They're so connected to the riverbeds. They clean the riverbed so that the river can breathe. And whatever groundwater is coming up in the river, it can get through because there's no sludge stuck in the rocks, because the salmon come through and they dig these, you know, foothole pits for the eggs. That means that the river just got healthier because salmon came. And so unlike before, when we went and the river, when the spring dried up and we went to Hawaii to get water, and we went to Uchimek to do that water ceremony too, that this time we were told that it's not enough. We're not enough to go to the spring and sing. The issues are bigger. It's around the 20 sacred mountains. And so it's our job to reach out and find people, find the other people who's going to help do something. They're going to stand for something. They're going to lift up something. Maybe they don't believe in anything right now, but they're waiting for something because they don't know what to do, because what they have been doing isn't really working and they don't have any other direction. And so what we did was, you know, we started the Run for Salmon. And the idea of Run for Salmon was to wake people up, not just Winnemem people, not just Indian people or tribal people, but everybody who might have forgotten about salmon, might not have grown up with salmon, might not know what they do for drinking water, how the salmon protect all the resources that people need. And so that's what we started. So maybe we can show that clip.
I've learned a lot already on this journey, imagining what it's like for the salmon to come back and return.
The horses cross over the waterways that goes down into the watershed for the salmon. And so they put down those prayers for all of these streams that used to have salmon coming up the mouth of them. Oh, run for salmon! So we have to keep standing up for the water and for the salmon. Tell the people that, you know, let's just get out of their way, let them have their waterway, and they will do what salmon are supposed to do.
We are the voice of the water. We are the voice of the water.
Aloha, everybody. So looking at the Run for Salmon film, and I came back in the house. I think I'm going to go outside again because I might not be clear to each of you right now. So I'm heading out. But those actions that we did, whether it was Run for Salmon or for Mauna Kea over all of these years, really they're possible because we're coming together as people. And when we put a call out, like Run for Salmon in California, and people came. They came to help. They came to go on this journey. We went, and others, whether you were from there or came from another place. That's what has been probably for me the most significant part of all of this, is that the friendships that we have solidified over time. Yes, we all have our issues that we're standing for. There's huge things that are happening right now. Just because we're in a pandemic doesn't mean that the developers are stopping anything. In fact, I think they move more swiftly, and they go undercover, and they try to pass bills in the legislature, or they make decisions that you're not even aware of, because you're reflecting and living in these moments of refocusing perhaps on what's going on, that you miss what the planning and the permits. And I know that's happening for Mauna Kea right now. As we talk on this Zoom, we know even though we were thousands, it's as if we were never there, because they're going full steam ahead to build this telescope no matter what we've done for 11 years. Their plan is still to build, no matter what the people have said that have stood with Caleen and stood with the state of California and stood beyond that. No matter where we are, they're still planning to go ahead as if we have never been there, as if we've never stood, as if we don't belong in our home territories and in our homeland. And so if we just take that and put it on the side just for a moment, what's been the most significant is the relationships that have come out of this, between whether it's Caleen and I, Native Hawaiians and Winnemem Wintu, those of us who went to Standing Rock, those who have gone to Oak Flat, and really way more than that. What has brought us all together? And if you're on this Zoom presentation today, something brought you, something in nature, someone who was close to you that said, hey, or something in you that said, I now have to stand. But the relationships that we have made over time that have brought us to this place are treasures. They're treasures that would not have happened if we hadn't done a call out along the way. If we hadn't been on Facebook and saw a post that said, come and stand. If you weren't on Instagram and you missed that opportunity to make a lifelong relationship, alliance, connection. So I know we might have a Q&A coming up perhaps. So for myself, the Mauna Kea movement in California, I want to thank you if you're on this call, whether you're uprooted and rising and connected to that movement, or UC Divest TMT. You have been so significant for us, whether you are of Native tribes that have stood with us, stood with Caleen. We are only stronger because you keep on moving. And especially for those of you who can't see the mountain every day, you're not at the location, you're living elsewhere, but you still choose to totally put so much effort and work and love and commitment into these movements. We cannot thank you enough. I can't thank you enough for giving me the inspiration, the motivation to remain a presence for what I hold dear. And I know for Caleen, that's the same. And so I really want to call attention to how you can help. And for us, I think in the Q&A section of the chat, there's going to be some ways that you can get involved and you can help, because I know there's a Board of Regents meeting coming up in California, and TMT is going to be on that. And like I said, how easily it is to dismiss us as if we never stood on the mountain in thousands, in like we never marched in 20,000s of us, you know, like we haven't signed a petition that is so huge. And like they don't think that we're going to stand again, but we will. So I know that Caleen and I both, I'm going to speak just not on your behalf, Caleen, but with you in my heart and mind, that we honor one of our relatives today who we have both stood with. And that's what it takes. It takes really standing with each other, especially us women, who will keep standing no matter what, and our men too, who are here to protect and to safeguard and be at our sides and guide the protocols, whatever it takes. I'm sending my part of this today, and I'm going to assume and know that Caleen is too, to our dear comrade, ally, friend, and now angel, LaDonna Brave Bull Allard, who I want to honor today, you want to honor today. Yeah, I'm going to have you take it from there, Caleen, and just talk about how we honor each other as we stand and do whatever we need to do.
Mhm. It's a tough thing, you know, when I look around the world and I see all of the women that I've stood with and that I love, and I love their families, and I see the struggles that is repeating itself. You know, it's kind of like, you know, in the Run for Salmon video, you hear Gary on the boat and he's singing really loud one of our songs, and what's happening right then is that the boat is coming to the confluence of another river, coming into the same river, making that river bigger. And it's at those confluences that we have that power. And I see that LaDonna was like that, was a confluence of power that was giving into the larger river system, you know, and we recognize those confluences. When we come to them, we sing, we pray to that event, that happening, that new water is mixing with this other water, old water from this place is coming to the old waters from the Sierras, you know, maybe the mountains that are not volcanic, and mixing, and in that churn is those unexpected allies of help, of assistance, of dreams, of support, you know, in that way that helps. But then again, it's, you know, it's as sad as when the spring goes dry. It's that sad when you lose a comrade, when you lose somebody who, you know, did her whole life do these things. And why is it? I always think it's like, why do we have to spend our life doing this? Why can't the world and the, what do they call, civilization, you know, help not have this happen? Why is it? You know, I watched my grandma spend her whole life like that. And my mom and my dad, you know, everybody has to fight for everything that we shouldn't be fighting for that. We should have time for our families and just visiting, rather than to put on the armor, as best as we can. And I think, it's so sad that the armor we put on is like love for this mountain, love for this river, love for that salmon, love for our families. When I look at those people who went to the Capitol, they were armed with weapons and they killed 5 people there. And really nothing really changed. They did all that and still nothing really changed about how bad that was or how awful. What kind of people are we if we do that? That's supposed to be, in my mind, a sacred place. It's the birth of this nation. And it got clobbered by people who just didn't really care about it, I guess. I don't know what happened. And then they go right back to, like you say, I don't know, the Zoom calls. I mean, my little brain is probably like I got a Zoom bug or something, because, you have PG&E doing something on the river, and then you have the Bureau of Reclamation still planning to raise the dam higher at the same time they're trying to, do something about the salmon. And then you have DWR, the Department of Water Resources, and the State Water Board. All of these events are happening, all of these meetings are happening, and they're talking about they're talking about the water you're standing for, trying to protect, but they're not telling you, it's I mean, even when we were in that one UC meeting in Berkeley, and we were talking about the heritage rights, including Hawaii, the Native Hawaiians. And so I'm asking Janet Napanatalo or whatever about how can you make decisions and rules for Hawaiians when they're not here? And they have such a different way of life than any of the tribes in this state. Why would you be making rules for Hawaii? You should go over there and ask them, what they would like to do, and not lump them into, they should have their own separate agreement about indigenous rights of their people or their items or those things. And I'm saying is like, you can't have a blanketed policy that, says we're going to do the same thing with the Lakota as we're going to do the 135 tribes in California. It's impossible. It's not right. There's a lot of mistakes that are made when things like that happen, and a lot of things they miss. And it's like this world that we're in almost makes people miss the real life of living, the real life of giving, and how good that feels to be like that. And we don't really care about that. It's like this country, where do you learn that? Because I know you don't learn it in the school system. And we have so many problems. We have so many issues that, the Native people never had that. We never had jails. We never had prisons. We never had orphanages. We didn't have old folks' homes. And it wasn't because we didn't think they were needed. They weren't needed. And now they are. I mean, now you can't, take care of your own folks. So it's like, but I think that, the world is losing leaders like LaDonna, but also in other countries that are being killed. They're actually being terminated because they're a leader. And we don't seem to get that, and even then in the States, we have a lot of leaders that are just flooded with hardship. And it's a purposeful hardship that's you know, it's kind of like I always say is like, we never knew poverty until they did the dam and they tossed us into this poverty. There was never a poverty before that. There was always plenty of food and the medicines and family and fun and a place to stay, a place to live. And then we put the dam in, supposed to be good for everybody. All things are going to be better now. And they take this whole tribe and they toss them into poverty. And then they say, well, you know, no point in giving them any kind of money for any kind of land because they should just go away. I mean, that's in a document, a government document. It says, don't bother sending them any supplies or anything. You know, what they should do is just go away. It's like, and I put that together with how this country treats its own homeless people. They don't want them. They just want them to go away. It's like, let's just take out our tents and their sleeping bags and everything they have, and maybe they'll go away. It's crazy. It's a crazy thought that we can't share. We're the, you know, and here in California, we're the 5th largest economy system in the world. I mean, we're better than most countries. And we can't find a way to help people. We don't even want to find out if, like, oh, you lost your job 2 months ago and that's why you're homeless now. Or you had this catastrophe in your life and now you're homeless. Or how many kids are homeless. You know, it doesn't seem to be of concern because, and I think it's because we don't have these confluences that come together to remind everybody. These confluences of power, these confluences of recognizing, you know, even it's like Winnemem Wintu. What are the chances that the Winnemem Wintu would know that there's 20 sacred mounds around the world? They already knew the world was round. They didn't have to sail across the sea to see if it was flat or not. But it's in our history. It's in our teachings about about where water comes from. You know, it's not just this one little spot. But other people, you know, they don't think about, I mean, we even have a whale song. We're inland tribe. But Graham said that, you know, the seals used to come up to where we are. And the eels would come up to where we are. But anymore, they can't because of all of the changes that have happened. But we have seal stories on the river. And so, you know, we have a lot of evidence that things weren't the way that they are now. And it is not as restricted as the textbooks or people want to tell you that, you know, that was impossible or that's not going to happen. It already happened. Seals already came up there. It already did happen. It could happen again. You know, it's like, you know, Mother Earth doesn't really need people. And it would all go back to a functioning, imbalanced way of life again. We don't need, you know, nuclear waste thrown in the ocean. All of those kinds of things, they're going around and creating dump sites where indigenous people live off of those gulfs and those bays and all of the things that live in them, you know.
Mahalo, Caleen, for all of that. Mana'o, as we said, anytime we sit with you, I know that many of the people that are on this Zoom call are really your dear friends, your supporters, your allies, and hopefully there's many who just joined for the first time and they said, oh, wow, I better look at, you know, who this chief is and jump in and help. And it's starting to rain, so I've been moving around to get out of the raindrops with my computer. But I think that you know, I don't know how my screen looks to everybody out there, but know that I'm just moving out of the rain. And Greg, I think that because I see you here, either we're in a different section right now or we're coming to a close. And so I'm going to turn it over to you to see, and you see, so I'm going to be moving because it is raining right now. This is Waimea, you know, ua ki pu'upu'u. So I'm just going to settle on my porch. And if you can't see me very well, excuse me for that. But I'm just getting some shelter and really looking at what Caleen is saying. This is really real. This is serious. This is, lifelong work, effort, struggle, challenge. It's exhausting. We get sick. We recover. We stand again. There's so much happening. So Greg, before you take us where we're going next, I just want to say to all the young people out there, because I know there's our nieces, those who call us auntie, those who call us maybe grandma, make sure you take care of your health and your well-being, because if you're going to stand, you got to be healthy in order to do that. And I don't have, the words to really articulate that right now in a few minutes, but really it's everything. So take care of yourselves and then stand. So Greg, thank you.
Yeah, oh, you're most welcome. I'm so grateful for this conversation. I think we've all learned a lot. We are coming to a close, and I want to honor everyone's time, and especially yours. But I just want to underscore that the themes of confluence that you both talked about, how things flow together and people find their allies, their stances, and that this is really powerful language. I'm also interested in a parting thought, a short parting thought from either of you. When we find these confluences, but they're not smooth, they include tension, or we're faced up with opposition, and tell us, where's the hope for your movements in terms of something other than direct action that's so powerful, but ultimately we've seen what police force can be in this country, and it's scary, frankly. I mean, today we got a bit of a reprieve from the brink with the George Floyd decision, but we live in a state where police violence is real enough. And having witnessed your movements firsthand, it terrifies me to see the nature of the police there, the nature of precarity. And so I'm wondering what both of you brief thoughts about best practices for engagement from both sides that de-escalate these situations, take seriously consent from Indigenous peoples, and move things forward. And maybe I'm just too hopeful that there could be such a remedy, but you've both labored so long and so hard in these issues. If you have some glimmer of hope that you could share.
You got hope, Caleen. For the Mauna Kea movement, as we've witnessed, and all of you have watched our movement unfold before we officially came down in 2020, because we knew, well, for a lot of reasons, but one being we knew that they weren't going to attempt construction, so that we could come down, pool our resources, take care of our own families, but never stop. So for us, I don't want to call it a front line, in that comparing it to when you're in a standoff. So I'll separate the two words.
You've frozen on us just a little bit there, Pua.
Am I here? If not, let's go to Caleen.
I think that, when we talk about the confluences and changes that are coming about, we've been praying for these things. All of these movements have prayer warriors that are putting down the drum beats, every line, every place, Oak Flat and Line 3 and the Apple, those in Canada that are fighting the I want to say Peabody Mine, but that's Navajo. There's so many, and that I believe that when that vibration hits the trees and the ground, and it comes across, and it comes to these mountains, it comes to these confluences, that it gathers up like rolling stones in the river, that by the time it gets to the ocean, it has a beachfront, it has a sandbar, it has this giant wave action. And as we go along, I can only hope and pray that the decisions of the president right now is making by appointing a number of tribal people in high positions in this government for the very first time ever. And that they are not afraid to make the statements that they have been making. You know, they're not just taking a job, they're taking a stand, they're taking a position. They have prepared their whole life to be this. And they have backers who believe in that they can do this. And right now it's flooding into the political realm of this nation right now. You know, in that political realm, they're going to figure some things out about Mother Earth and nature and what it means to tell them no, you can't frack no more. No, you can't, you know, dig up that oil that's under the water table anymore. Money is not worth that, you know, and address the hoarding of money. You know, we have to stop that kind of thing. It's like they're not creating jobs, they're destroying the ability to feed ourselves. So I think that when we look at things right now, we are hopeful that there are a number of people who are developing some ethics, and they're bringing that back into politics and using that position to change things for all of the people, all of the children that are coming up now. That's our hope, that things are changing. And for the leaders, you know, maybe things will change too, as these kind of programs put out the ideas to people that, you know, we are not the enemy here. We are not trying to prevent people from having jobs. We're trying to make sure that everybody has water, everybody has food, everything that is good. That's what we're standing for on all of those front lines. They have ethics. You know, Winona LaDuke on line 3 and Faith Spotted Eagle, they have ethics. You know, Karina Gould in the Shell Mound, the ethics is there, and it makes a point of reference. If the Shell Mound becomes the vision of the Ohlone people of Karina, it becomes that huge event of goodness for all of the people in Berkeley, for all of the people who stood for that. And don't we want to be that? You know, don't we want to have that? And I think as salmon, the run for salmon goes, and we have more and more people starting to understand that connection. You know, we have millennials that are of wealth. They are already of wealth, but they don't like how that wealth was built. And so they're looking for different ways. And all of these frontline, we call them front lines because they're standing for everybody. They're standing not for even themselves. It's like, do we want to stop Shasta Dam? Yes. Is it because we don't want drinking water to go to Southern California? No. It's for the salmon. And the salmon are the ones to make sure that the drinking water that does go to San Diego is still good, not contaminated, you know. And that indigenous knowledge around the world is right now, it has to be the thing that comes to the surface so that the people don't destroy their own world.
Oh, wow. Well, on that note, let's hope people have ears to hear. You know, you've painted a picture largely of optimism, and the scary part is necessary because we need to wake up. I think we can, whatever our politics are, however we feel about particular movements, collectively, I think we understand we need to wake up, look to one another for sources of ethical teachings, of ways of comportment, of solidarity, even when we differ on particular causes. And I think that's quite critical in all of this. I want to apologize to the people who put in Q&A questions. We didn't have time to get to all of them, but I hope, or really any, in a direct sense, but I think as the conversation unfolded, I've been tracking the Q&A, most everything's been touched upon. And those questions that didn't get touched upon, I think if you viewers Google these two women and see the different resources they put on the web, that their respective causes have much information out there. There's so much to be learned. And I'm happy if people wish to be in touch with me to help provide some resources as well. I won't speak for others. In any case, I'm, in the interest of everyone's time, going to bring us to a close. I'll defer if either of you wanted to say the final word, but let me just first thank you both for joining us, giving up time and energy to be here with us. I had a number of students on the call. We have various community members, allies, various Indigenous people. It's just so wonderful. I mean, Zoom is an impoverished environment. We get that, but there is a richness to the fact that we can have a audience as diverse as this in a moment, and to have ears to hear. So just gratitude, know that. And thanks again to our staff for making this happen. Mahalo to both of you. Okay.
I'd just like to say one last thing about inviting the audience now to check out a film called Winnemem, one word. And we'll be putting that up on the website soon, Winnemem. Oh, you have it there. And there'll be a link to watch that film. And that word is sacred water. Winnemem means sacred water. And so that has been put up for all the viewers here to, you know, do a little more to gain some other understanding. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for hanging in there. We do love everybody.
And we love you. Thank you both. And thank you to our audience and everybody for tuning in. This will be archived on the Walter Capps website so people can watch it. Again, I trust that it's a wonderful resource. I know I'll be appealing to it. May everyone have a great night, and join us next week for Nick Tilson, and aloha until then.
Aloha.
Bye.
Oh.